for young families with the children. They meet at 7 to 7:10 every night. So we hope that you would join many meeting here as you can. So we encourage you to do that. And there's online giving, even though we cannot meet person to person at physical church building. You can always give, and you can go to lombardsda.com, and then you can click on online giving, and it's gonna give you, it's gonna walk you through that, so it's not gonna be so difficult. So I encourage you to do that. And during the worship service, I encourage all of you to, when you sign in, mute your mic unless it is your turn to pray or sing or participate, so that we don't have any echoing in the background. So those are our announcements today, and I'm going to pray before I lead the praise leaders to lead the songs. Dear God, we thank you this morning, and we thank you that we can be connected even in our houses. And this reminds us of the situation in the early churches after the Pentecost. They were persecuted, and they couldn't go out and do a lot of things in the public, but the believers were connected in their homes, and they were helping each other, providing and sharing their each other's needs. So we want us to be reminded that even in the midst of this chaos, that you are with us, and we can be happy and we can be peaceful because we have church family here, and because we have you in the midst. So as we start our worship service, we pray that you would guide us, and please speak to us through the message today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Scripture reading is taken from Ecclesiastes 12:13 and 14. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil.
Amen. Thank you so much, everyone who has joined this morning. It really is a joy and a pleasure to see you all here, albeit online and virtually. It really is happy to see all of you. Let me ask you a favor before we start. I know this is, not the ideal place to meet, and if we could, we would like to meet in person. But I think, a few years down the road, when we look back at this time, I think this would be a memorable time, an unusual time, and I think it'll be nice to leave a memory of this by taking a screenshot of everyone's faces. For those of you who don't want to be on the screenshot, you're more than welcome to keep your camera off. But at least for a few moments, I would like to just ask if you could just turn your camera on so that we can see everybody who's on. And I'm going to ask, I'm not going to do it myself, but whoever's tech savvy enough to take a picture of a screenshot of everyone who's joined, I'd appreciate that. And if you could share that with me, we'll send that out on our email next week with the pictures. So, it's really good to see all of you. Again, if you feel uncomfortable sharing, you don't have to, but it's nice to see all of you out there. Beautiful faces. It's happy to see all of you, but especially seeing the children is especially fun, and it's good to see all of you. All right, so Brother Chris, can you take a screenshot of all of us? All right, so I'm gonna say 1, 2, 3, cheese, and if you can make a big smile, everyone come together to the camera. All right, 1, 2, 3, cheese. All right, beautiful. I have a lot of beautiful faces out there. Awesome. All right, so if you want to turn off your cameras, you can do so. Again, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And today I gave myself a little challenge. I'm gonna challenge myself for the rest of my sermon not to mention the virus. That's the only thing we've been talking about for the past few weeks, and it's been stressing us out. I don't want to be putting our heads in the sand, but still, at least for the next few moments, if you can just take our minds off of that thing that we've been thinking about for the past few weeks, and just focus on the Word of God and find hope and find assurance in the Word of God, I think that would be a blessing for each and every one of us. So before we get started again, let's have another word of prayer. Our gracious Father in heaven, Lord, we love you and we thank you so much for being an awesome God, for being such a kind God, and giving us the opportunity to come together virtually to worship you together in heart. Although we are apart from each other physically, Lord, we are together. And Lord, as we are together, we know that you are here with us as well. So Father, bless this time, bless this worship, and be amongst us, for this is our prayer in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. All right, let me share my screen again. Uh-oh, there we go. All right, the title of my message today is Nothing Better, and it is a continuation of my sermons for the past 2 Sabbaths. And we're going to start off with Matthew chapter 24, and we're not going to spend too much time here, but we will start off with Matthew 24 and do a little bit of a review before I get into my message for today. So it says here, and because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come. So last Sabbath, we talked about how the end will come and what the true sign of the end times is. And we learned that the true sign of the end is not disasters, it's not wars, it's not diseases. The true sign of the end is actually the gospel message. The true sign of the end is the love of God being spread all across the world. And that's how the world will come to an end. Not by wars, not by strife, and so on and so forth. It's by the love of God. And here specifically it says that this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world, and then the end will come. So what ushers in the end eventually is the gospel, but Matthew uses a very specific word, and he says, this gospel of the kingdom will be preached. It's not any other gospel. He says it's this gospel. So what is this gospel referring to? I believe this gospel is referring to what we find in Revelation chapter 14. And how do I know that? If we look at the words and compare them, I believe that this gospel is referring to a special gospel in Revelation 14. What is that gospel? Revelation 14, verse 6, it says, "Then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people." And then at the end of these three angels' messages, it says here is the patience of the saints. Here are those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. So why do I believe that the gospel, this gospel that Jesus refers to in Matthew 24, that ushers in the end, is referring to this message in Revelation 14? I believe so because of the similarities in the phrasing that is used. What do I mean by that? So let's go back to Matthew chapter 12, verse 14, and let's highlight some of the key words here. He says, lawlessness will abound. And he says, he who endures to the end shall be saved. He talks about the gospel of the kingdom and talking about how the gospel will go to all the nations, and then the end will come. So lawlessness endures, gospel, all the nations, the end. So how are these words found in Revelation 14? Revelation 14, it talks about the gospel. I highlighted those words for you. It says, having the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation. Verse 12, here is the patience of the saints. The word patience is the same word that is used in Matthew 24 for endure. Here is the endurance of the saints. Here are those who keep the commandments of God. Whereas Matthew 24 talked about lawlessness being abounding in the world in the last days. Now in Revelation 14, that it talks about people who will not live a lawless life. There are people who are living according to the commandments of God. So I believe, based on these similarities of the words that are being used in Matthew 24 and Revelation 14, I believe Jesus is referring to the everlasting gospel that is preached by the three angels in Revelation 14 that brings in the last days, that brings the end of the world. Now in Matthew chapter 24, we saw that this gospel brought the end. How do we see that in Revelation 14? In Matthew 24, how does it talk about the coming of the end? Matthew 24, 30 and 31. It says, they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven. Jesus is describing the end, the very end. The Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a great sound. How does Revelation talk about the end? Now, this is Revelation 14, verse 14 and 15 is right after the three angels' messages. Okay. How is the end described here? Then I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and on the cloud sat one like the Son of Man. And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice. So again, you see the similarities in the wordings. You see the Son of Man, you see the cloud, you see an angel, and the word great sound and loud voice, they're translated differently, but in the original language, they're actually literally the same words. The loud voice is the great sound. So what's the pattern that you see similarly in Matthew 24 and Revelation 14? In Matthew 24 and Revelation 14, in both cases, this gospel, this particular gospel is preached to all nations. And then what happens? And during that time, what are the saints doing? The saints endure by keeping the law of God and having the faith of Jesus. And then what you see is the end comes. So this gospel that Jesus is referring to here is the everlasting gospel that is referred to in Revelation chapter 14. So for the next few weeks, we are going to look at this everlasting gospel that will be preached right before the second coming of Jesus, that will usher in the end of the world, that will usher in the second coming of Jesus, because that's what Jesus says will happen. So which gospel is this? As I referred to earlier, the gospel in Matthew 24 is referring to the everlasting gospel preached by the three angels in Revelation 14. It is the proclamation of that particular good news to the whole world that brings an end to the world, that brings the second coming of Jesus Christ. So what is this message all about? So for the next few weeks, as I said, we'll look at these three angels' messages in Revelation 14. And for Seventh-day Adventists, many Seventh-day Adventists are very aware, or they're well acquainted with the three angels' messages. You know, you've heard about it a lot. So for Seventh-day Adventists, I think this study will be beneficial for you, because I'm going to look at the three angels' messages slightly from a different perspective. I believe, you know, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Seventh-day Adventist, you know, and I believe in the Seventh-day Adventist message just deep in my heart. But we're going to look at from a slightly different angle, and we're going to try to make it as Christ-centered as possible. For those of you who have never heard about the three angels message, I'm glad that you've joined us, because you're about to hear a message that will bless your life, and it's an important message that Jesus says in Revelation that is the message that needs to be heard in the last days. So thank you for joining again. So what is this message all about? So today we're going to be looking at the first angel's message. So what is the first angel's message? Then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting what? The everlasting gospel. The gospel is just a technical term for the good news. You know, it's a news that is of doom and gloom. This is a good news that brings hope. So what is this good news? Verse 7, saying with a loud voice, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come. Now, this seems quite ironic, because who thinks that judgment is good news? But yet here it says in verse 6 that this angel is preaching the everlasting good news. But in verse 7, the good news is that the hour of his judgment has come. How can that be good news? So let's look at how the book of Revelation is written. You know, in your rooms, I'm going to ask you to fill in the blank for me. Mary had a little lamb, right? You know, there can be millions of things that can go into the blank and make perfect sense grammatically. Mary had a little house. Mary had a little car. Mary had a little brother. Mary had a little sister. Mary had a little whatever. Right? So you can fill in the blank with any other word, any other noun out there in the world, and it would make perfect sense grammatically. But I believe that most of you out there, especially if you have grown up in the English-speaking world, most of you, if not all of you, have answered Mary had a little lamb, because you know the song that goes, Mary had a little lamb. Now that's how the book of Revelation is written. The way that the book of Revelation is written, it uses words that remind you of certain passages that were written in the Old Testament. So when you see a combination of those words, you're reminded of what was written in the Old Testament. And in order to understand what Revelation is saying, you have to go back to the original context of the Old Testament. So why am I saying this? So it says, fear God and judgment has come. So what is Revelation reminding us of? What song, if you will, what Mary had a little lamb is he trying to remind us of? So Revelation 14:7, fear God, judgment has come. I believe that Revelation is drawing our attention back to Ecclesiastes chapter 12, 13, and 14, which is written by King Solomon. And here he says, fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all. For God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil. So this is where Jesus is wanting us to draw our attention to, Ecclesiastes chapter 12, 13, and 14. Now, so here in Ecclesiastes, there's some more context given. So there's judgment, and every work will be brought into judgment, including every secret thing. So let me ask you again, does this sound like good news? This sounds like, when we speak to it, in Christmas time, we sing about Santa, and how does the song go? He's making a list, checking it twice, whether you've been naughty or nice. And we use that as a threat against our children to be nice, basically, right? And this is what it kind of sounds like. God's watching you in your secret room, and whatever you're doing there, he's watching and he's making a list and he's checking it twice. So this really doesn't sound like a good news. But how is this going to be good news for us? And I believe this is good news. And we'll look through the context of Ecclesiastes to find out why this is good news for us. So what does God bring into judgment? It says here, every work will be brought into judgment. Every work will be brought into judgment. So what does every work mean, or what does every work look like in the book of Ecclesiastes? Ecclesiastes 1:14. So Solomon, this is written by Solomon, who's considered in the Bible as the wisest man that has ever lived. So here it says, I have seen all the works. Again, this is the same phrase that is used in Ecclesiastes 12:14, where it says every work into judgment. This is the same thing. I have seen every work that has been done under the sun, and indeed, all works, all of this is vanity and grasping for the wind. So that's what Solomon's view is on all the works. Okay. So let's put it into greater context. So this is the beginning of the book. This is where Solomon says, vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. This is not a message that you want to hear on a Saturday morning from a preacher. You want to hear that everything is meaningful, that life is beautiful. But Solomon, the wisest man that ever lived, says, no. Everything is meaningless. The word literally means nothingness. Nothingness, 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 nothingness. Everything is nothingness. What profit has a man from all his labor in which he toils under the sun? The word labor here and the word toil are literally the same words in the original language. So what profit does a man have from all his toil in which he toils under the sun? So he's saying there's no profit from all the work that we're doing. You go to work, you work a 9-to-5 job, and then you work a second job, and you come back home, you feed your children, you do your laundry, and you clean your house. And Solomon is telling us all of that. That's meaningless. So how is this supposed to be good news for us? Let's make the picture even gloomier for now. That which has been is what will be. Why is everything meaningless? Because that which has been is what will be. That which is done is what will be done. and there is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which it may be said, see, this is new? It has already been in ancient times before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of things that are to come by those who will come after. So why is everything meaningless? Because what you've done is something that has been done before, and it is something that will be done in the future as well. So what Solomon is basically saying is what you're doing is not special. You think you're doing a really good job at your job, but guess what? Before you, there were people who did your job equally as good as you do, and even better. And after you leave this world, there will be people who do your job equally as good as you do, or even better. And you are not unique. You are not special. That's what he's basically saying. You know, this is what I think I look like. I mean, not terribly ugly, you know, I have this lighting on my face, so it seems reasonably not so ugly, right? But in reality, this is what I look like more often. You know, on a daily basis, this is what I look like. And yes, you know, the picture is made a little bit better with my daughter, Gracie, when she was a baby. But, you know, look at my face, you know, look how messy that couch, that futon is, and look at my doll eyes. That's what I look like. I think I'm this, but in actuality, for most of the day, this is what I am. And as much as I think I am this, in society, this is what I am. I'm a number. And in greater reality, I'm not even this. I'm more like this, or even more like this. Because what I do is not special. As much as I think that, you know, that everyone thinks that I'm a special person, and the work that I'm doing is an amazing work, but Solomon says, no. What you've done, people have done before you, and people will do after you, and no one's going to remember you. I think of my grandmother. My grandmother was almost 90 years old when she passed away a couple of years ago, and you know, she lived a very difficult life. You know, like most Korean people in those age, you know, she went through the Korean War. But not only that, during and after the war, she lost 3 of her children. She had 7 children, and she lost 3 of her children. And a few years after that, she lost her husband. So, you know, she was a widow at a young age. And after that, in order to make ends meet, she was working in construction sites. And she's one of the strongest people that I've known. Not necessarily mentally speaking, she's physically one of the strongest people that I know. She was very physically strong until almost the end of her life. And, you know, she was working in construction sites, doing menial labor and mostly labor that mostly men do. Right. And among 11 of her grandchildren, you know, I think I was one of her closest grandchildren because, you know, I was able to live with her when I was in college, and I spent a lot of time talking with her. You know, and late in the nights, you know, she would talk with me and she would tell me the story of her life. And I would listen on, and it would basically be the same story again and again and again. The story of her suffering. And I would listen to it, and I would be impressed by it. But to be honest with you, I don't think I remember even 5% of what she said. I knew that it was incredible, but I don't remember the details. And that's what Solomon is reminding us of. You think you're special, you think you'll be remembered, but not even your grandson remembers the details of your life. My children will have no memory whatsoever of my grandmother. They might know her name, but as far as all her works has now come to nothingness in a sense. Now, Now, Solomon makes it a little bit even worse, and we're going to make it worse before we make this a beautiful message and a good news about it. So bear with me for a moment here. So it's not just the everyday normal people that experience this. Even people like Solomon, he says, I have made my works great. I built myself houses, planted myself vineyards, made myself gardens and orchards, and planted all kinds of fruits trees in them. I made myself water pools from which to water the growing trees of the grove. I acquired male and female servants. Yes, I had greater possessions of herds and flocks and all who were in Jerusalem before me. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and so on and so forth. I acquired male and female singers and so on and so forth. So I became great and excelled more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me. So what Solomon is basically saying was, he was the richest man in the world, in his country. So he's basically the Bill Gates of his country. He's the smartest person, so he's the best professor in Harvard. He hires Grammy award-winning singers to sing for him personally. He has all the wealth in the world, he has all the fame, and he has all the physical pleasures in the world as well. He had 700 wives and 300 concubines. He had everything anyone could ask for in terms of worldly things. But this is the conclusion that he reaches. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had done, and all the labor, all the toil in which I had toiled, and indeed all was vanity and grasping for the wind. There was no profit under the sun. He says, even all that I've done, as the wisest man, as the richest man, as the most famous man, as whatever man I was, even that was vanity. All my work was vanity. Why? The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. Yet I myself perceive that the same event happens to them all. So I said in my heart, as it happens to the fool, it also happens to me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart, this also is vanity, for there is no remembrance of the wise than of the fool forever, since all that is now will be forgotten in the days to come. And how does a wise man die? Same as the fool dies. It's not like because you're the smartest person on the world, you die a different death. You'll get sick and then you'll die one day, and guess what? You'll be forgotten. People will not remember you. It's not that only the wise and the fool are the same. Human beings and the animals are the same. For what happens to the sons of men also happens to animals. One thing befalls them, as one dies, so does the other. Surely they all have one breath. Man has no advantage over animals, for all is vanity. All go to one place, all are from dust, and all return to dust. We come from the same place, we go to the same place. So Solomon says, we as human beings have no advantage over animals. Now let's, now that we've hit rock bottom in our self-esteem, now let's start picking ourselves up, because I believe there's a beautiful gospel here, beautiful good news here. What is that? Oh, before we get there. So Ecclesiastes 2:17, therefore I hated life, because the work that was done under the sun was distressing to me, for all is vanity and grasping for the wind. So let's get to the good news here now for a moment. Ecclesiastes 3:14. I know that whatever God does, it shall be forever. Nothing can be added to it, and nothing can be taken from it. Okay. Now, there's a very stark contrast with God and human being here. Solomon has been saying everything human beings do, all the works that human beings do, it's been done before and it's going to be done again. So therefore, you're not special. But what God does, it not only lasts forever, it wasn't done before, and nobody else can do what God has done. So the conclusion that Solomon reaches here, he says, God does it, that men should fear before him. So the difference between God and humans is that what humans have done is repeatable and it will be repeated, but what God is doing is not repeatable. And therefore what God does is special because no one else can imitate what God has done. And therefore Solomon says that's why we should fear God. But not only that, he gets to the crux. He gets to the pinnacle of the gospel of his message here. Ecclesiastes 3:15. That which is has already been, and what is to be has already been. And God requires an account of what is past. Okay, that sounds very philosophical. It is very philosophical, but let me break that down for you. The last sentence especially. It says God requires an account of what is past. So what I've done here in this world will be forgotten in this world. But it says here, God requires, or the original Hebrew would say God, he was enjoying, or he was pursuing an account of what is past. Although the small things that I do in my life appear to be meaningless to myself and to the rest of the world, God is keeping an account of everything that I've done. Why? Because I am special to him. Luke 12:6-7, has a very similar message, and Jesus lays it out in an easier word to understand. Jesus says, "Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 copper coins?" If you look in Matthew, it says sparrows are sold for two coins. But here it says 5 sparrows are sold for 2 copper coins. Why is there a difference here? And Jesus goes on, and not one of them is forgotten before God. So what's the 5th sparrow? It's the +1 that you get for buying 4. You buy 4 sparrows, 1 comes as a +1. And it says here, not even that +1 bird is forgotten before God, but the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Do not fear, therefore. Yes, we should fear God, but do not fear otherwise, because you are of more value than many sparrows. It may seem like the work that you're doing in your life may seem insignificant and may seem like, your boss doesn't recognize what you're doing. It may seem like, you're taking care of your children, you're homeschooling your children right now, and nobody recognizes the job that you're doing, and it seems like you're pouring all your effort, but for what end? But there is a God in heaven who is keeping record, and he's watching over you and caring for you and caring for every act that you're doing, and he's recognizing all the work that you are putting in. When I go back home to Korea, in the bookshelf, my mom has the photo albums full on one shelf. Why? If I showed that picture to a stranger, nobody would care for those pictures. I wasn't even that cute. Nobody wants to see my childhood pictures, but my mom loves those pictures. Why? Because she cares for me. And my account of my life is meaningful for her because of her love for me. So what about the judgment? Ecclesiastes 12, fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all. For God will bring every work into judgment, every secret thing, whether good or evil, things that have been recognized or not. God's keeping a record of all those things because you matter to him. And this message, I believe, should free us from the motives of our life. So what is the motive of our life? We want to be remembered. We want to be recognized in society. That's why we study. People study so that youth are studying so that they can get into good colleges. Why they want to get into good college? So that they can be recognized for the school name that they have. And they want to get a good job, a good earning job. Why? Because they want to be recognized in society. They want to have a good house because why? People will come into your home and they'll be impressed of how awesome your home is. You want to have a nice car because people will recognize your BMW and your Mercedes. But Solomon says, guess what? They'll recognize it now, but the next moment they've forgotten about you. But there is a God in heaven who recognizes you, even in the secret moments of your life. When you're taking care of your old mother who is on the hospital bed, when you're taking care of your children and changing even your children's diaper, God's keeping an account of that, and he's putting that in his photo album. Why? Because he cherishes those moments of love. Those are precious to him. So how are we to live life? Now, in the book of Ecclesiastes, I'm going to wrap up here soon. Now, Solomon talks about things in the superlative, talking about what's the most important thing in life. And this is what he says. Ecclesiastes 3:22, and he uses nothing better 4 times in the book. And it's talking about basically the same thing again and again. So I perceive that nothing is better that nothing is better than that a man should rejoice in his own works, for that is his heritage. For who can bring him to see what will happen after him? Again in Ecclesiastes 8:15. So I commended enjoyment, because a man has nothing better under the sun than to eat, drink, and to be merry. For this will remain him in the labor or toils all the days of his life, which God gives him under the sun. Ecclesiastes 2:24, nothing is better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that his soil should enjoy good in his labor, in his toil. This also I saw was from the hand of God. Ecclesiastes 3:12 and 13. I know that nothing is better for them than to rejoice, and that to do good in their lives, and also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his toil, all his labor. It is the gift of God. Now, earlier in the book, Solomon had said that toil is terrible. But when he's talking about the best life, he doesn't say that the best life is a life without toils. He doesn't say that your best life will be absent of labor and difficulty and toils in your life. No. He says the best life is enjoying despite the toils. And drinking and eating and enjoying life. Not in the sinful or the worldly way. Because here he says, it is the gift of God. He says that this is from the hand of God. So as we give our works to him as a living sacrifice, and as we offer our lives as a giving sacrifice, and as we recognize, as we realize and remember that every little thing that I do matters to God, I don't have to seek after the recognition of other people. I may do a good thing, and nobody in the world might not know that. But God knows, and he cares, and it matters for him. And he's watching over you and putting that in his photo album, and he's watching it. And he's looking at it, and he's rejoicing over you. And he wants you to do the same. Yes, we will toil in this world. There will be suffering. There will be painful labor. But he says, through it all, eat and drink and enjoy it as the gift of God. As you're in God, when you are in God, in Jesus Christ, he will do that for you. He will transform your life so that that he can bring about joy in the toils that you are going through. So as I'm finishing here, let me finish with an appeal. There may be some of you who don't know Jesus Christ, or some of you who know Jesus Christ but have not surrendered or need to resurrender your life. I want to ask you to just lay down all your works and all your striving for recognition in this world, because it's not going to matter in the end. But there is someone who will remember you forever. Jesus Christ will remember the smallest moments of your life forever because it matters to him. And I'm going to ask you to surrender yourself to him. Just say, Jesus, Okay, I surrender my striving for recognition. The only recognition that I need in my life is your recognition, because you care for me. And I know and I believe that will liberate you, that will free you from the bondage of recognition from the world. We are going to toil in times to come, and there will be toil and suffering. But in Jesus Christ, let us find hope. As we surrender our toil to God, as we say, God, I'm suffering, I want you to take care of me, he will take care of you, and he will give joy into your heart. So my hope and prayer is that today you will experience that joy, and that you will be able to rejoice as you fear God and recognize his difference from the rest of the world. All right, so I want to finish with a word of prayer. If you would join me in bowing your heads, and let's pray together. Our gracious Father in heaven, Lord, I thank you for being a God who recognizes us, and you remember even the smallest deeds of our lives, and it's special for you, special to you, Lord. Father, we lay down our toils at your feet today. Lord, many of us are suffering, and Lord, we don't know what tomorrow holds. But Lord, you have promised to us here in Ecclesiastes that you can give us joy even amidst those toils. So Father, Lord, as we come to you and as we lay down our sufferings in your hands, Lord, give us that joy. And may the next week be a life full of joy, and may we be merry and may we be happy and joyful with each other, in each other's presence, and in your presence all the more. For all these things we've prayed in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. All right, thank you very much. Don't go yet. Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have stopped sharing the screen. Brother Sion has an announcement to make, and please stay by for a couple minutes of fellowship. You know, we want to turn on our cameras and see each other before we go. So please stay by for a couple more minutes. And Brother Sion, please take it away.
Yeah, so I want to thank you for all coming here online, this online service, and I want to remind you that we also have prayer meetings on Friday evening at 7:30, and Wednesday Bible study on 7:30, and also we also have a daily worship on 7 to 7:15. This is for the families with young children. So it's all same link. You can click on the same link, and we hope that you would enjoy as much as you can. And I want to remind you of online giving. You can do so by going to the Lombard SDA website there, and you can click on online giving as you go to the menu, and you can do that at any of your convenient time. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to ask you again, if you can just turn on your cameras and let's see each other before we go. I know we've been all secluded and quarantined from each other, so it's good to see all your faces. It really, really is. And you can unmute yourselves, and let's enjoy ourselves. Like Solomon said, let's eat and drink and be merry.
What's for potluck?
Hey. Oh.
Hi, Edie.
We should have online potluck too.
Yeah, everyone go to your tables and keep your cameras on.
Sabbath, everyone.
Hi, Sheena. Bye.
Anybody want to
Good to see you, everyone.
Haji.
Among.
Armin. Hai Haji.
Wala mami.
Oh, say hi.
Hi, Kevin. Hi, Rochelle.
I'm trying.
Hello, Kevin Connell here, about to make world famous buckwheat pancakes.
Good waffles.
The next time we have a potluck, we'll look forward to your pancakes then.
All right.
You know, we never have done a potluck breakfast theme.
Ooh, that would be fun.
You know, the board talked about this before, but I think we should have maybe something like an online game night where we can virtually do, I don't know, like something like a Pictionary and socialize. So we'll think about doing that as well.
Kakama.
Can you connect the dots? Face the dots.
Kamusta?
Hi, Kate. It's good to see your fan.
Hi. Hello. Yan. Kamusta?
Oh my gosh.